Hi everyone, we're looking at collecting data in this video. So just how do you go about gathering a set of data that you're going to analyze with some of the bits we do later in the chapter. One possible way to collect data is through a survey. You've all probably filled one out at some stage. You know what a survey looks like, different types that you can use: interview, phone surveys, postal surveys, internet surveys not mentioned there. Have a quick look at this table here, okay? The advantages and disadvantages is just something that's going to come up in a few different places. As you'll be asked about what are the advantages of this survey or disadvantages. Okay, so you're conducting a survey, you're probably going to hand out questionnaires or ask people to fill out a questionnaire online. Okay, what does the questionnaire look like? It's normally tick boxes, or you might have short, concise questions, as you'll see in there. Some of the language here, the people who respond, they're called respondents. The person carrying out the questionnaire is often called an interviewer. If it's a face-to-face, fill out this form with me, please. If you might be a respondent online or by post as well. These notes are important. Just clear what you want to find out in the data that you need. Ask short, concise questions. You don't want to ask open questions on a questionnaire like, what's your opinion about? You want to say, do you agree with X, and you'll get a yes no answer. It's a lot easier to analyze. A few other points there. You normally start with easy questions if you're going to be asking people to give you a lot of data. So sometimes you do want that in a questionnaire. A more open question, you put it towards the end. Avoid leading questions. You'll see these in the exercises and they're reasonably obvious, but don't you agree or do you think that people are overpaid? It suggests that there is an answer that you should give there, and you want to remain neutral insofar as you can when you're acting as an interviewer or when you're filling out a questionnaire. And then personal questions, if you say, or questions that aren't objectively obvious. Do you live in an affluent area? That is very much depends on how the person perceives what affluent might mean. Are you well educated? Again, for some people that might mean, yeah, I'm well educated, I'm 16 years old and I've just done fourth year. Other people might say, well, no, I'm 16 years old and I've not got any university degrees or anything like that, so I'm not well educated. People aren't going to answer this "are you overweight" question honestly, so there's no point in asking that kind of question. Whereas a question that said, fill out which category of weight would you fall into. So this one here is a nice example, actually. The what age are you question, just which category do you fall into, people might feel more comfortable answering. And it's also easier to analyze. Okay, if you get data that's too specific, it can sometimes actually cause you trouble when you go to analyze it later on. Okay, responses like this one: how often do you play tennis? Sometimes. What does that mean? Is that once a week? Is that once a month? Is that once a year? Occasionally, often. Again, what does that mean? They don't make any sense. So how often do you play tennis might be once a week, once a month, once a year, never, something like that. All of your answers, if you're giving checkbox answers, they should be an exhaustive list. That means every possible category should be there. So this one there's no option for never. So that's a real problem here. The people who never play tennis don't have a box that they can check. Normal people enjoy swimming. Do you enjoy swimming? Yeah, you don't start with a leading point like that. That's a leading question, or questions that people won't honestly answer. Have you ever stolen goods from a supermarket, or do you take drugs, or anything like that? People aren't going to answer that type of thing honestly. Okay. A designed experiment is another way of collecting data. So this is where you will go out and you would say, for example, I'm going to measure the effect of aspirin on blood pressure. So what you're going to do in that case is give people aspirin in a certain group, and then you're going to measure, does it have any change on their blood pressure, something like that. The difference being here is you, the experimenter, are now interfering with the process of how this data is generated. So you're taking an active role in a design experiment, okay? And an important part of that we'll discuss later is the role of a control group when you do design an experiment. Oh yeah, that's down here. If you're talking about, does aspirin have an effect on blood pressure, for example, you'll have two groups, one of whom are getting aspirin and you're measuring their blood pressure. The other group, you might give them what's called a placebo, this word here, which is a pill that has no active ingredient in it. And you want to see, does the fact of taking the pill, that might be why blood pressure is dropping because people feel better about taking the pill, or is it actually the aspirin that's in the pill? Okay, and as I've said before, this chapter is all about learning new words, new terminology. An explanatory variable in our aspirin blood pressure case is, well, we've given them aspirin, that's what we control. And the response variable is what you measure afterwards, the blood pressure. Does it change or does it not change, for example? So explanatory and response variables there. So just looking at question 2 here, Carol wants to find out what people think of the HSE. Part of the questionnaire she's written is shown. Question 1, what is your date of birth? Why shouldn't that question be there? It's not relevant to what she's trying to find out. Okay, that's extraneous information, and generally people tend to be quite uncomfortable giving up information that's not maybe necessary for a survey. Don't you agree that waiting times for operations are too long? That's clearly a leading question. Okay, a more suitable question might be, what is your opinion about waiting times for operations? Something like that. How many times did you visit your doctor in the last year? Less than 5, 5 to 10, 10 or more. That is a bit vague. I think most people will be checking the less than 5 box. So a better answer there might be 0, 1 to 3 times, 3 to 6, 6 to 9, something like that. 9 or more or 10 or more is important to have, because some people might be going to the doctor quite a lot. Okay, question 6 about biased questioning. Which of the following questions are biased? Write them down and explain what makes them biased. A, did you go to the cinema in the last month? Nothing wrong with that question. Perfectly clear, perfectly unbiased. B, it's important to eat fruit. Do you eat fruit? Is obviously biased. It's setting up a judgment of people initially by saying you should be doing this. So people are more likely to go, oh yeah, I do that. How many hours of television do you watch each week? Nothing wrong with that. People can answer that probably reasonably well. Might be easier to say in the last week so that they can think of one specific week. In view of the huge number of road accidents outside the school, do you think the speed limit should be reduced? So that's obviously leading. They're saying, look, we're having lots of accidents outside. If you don't give an answer that yes, it should be reduced, it's almost like you're endorsing these accidents and saying they're great. So most people are going to say yes, the speed limit should be reduced, but it's a leading question. We'll wrap up here with question 10. A medical research company wants to investigate whether a new drug is effective in controlling blood pressure. They take 80 people who suffer from high blood pressure, divide them randomly into 2 groups of 40. Group A is given the drug, Group B is not given the drug, but they believe they are taking it. So they're given a sugar pill or a placebo pill. At the end of the study, the blood pressure of both groups are taken to see if the group is effective. Which group is the control group? That's group B. Okay, the control group, you want to measure, is there a difference between the average blood pressure in group A and the average blood pressure in group B from before and after the drug is given? What is the explanatory variable in the experiment? The explanatory variable is the drug that you're giving, and then the response variable is the blood pressure. Has it increased or decreased? That's responding to the explanatory variable, the drug. Which of these will best describe the research? Is it a designed experiment or an observational study? So these researchers are intervening with people's blood pressure by trying to bring down the blood pressure in group A. So that's a designed experiment. It'd be an observational study if they weren't giving any drugs, but just looking to see if, I don't know, the way people's lifestyle might affect blood pressure. That'd be observational if they're not interfering with the experiment. Okay, so that's collecting data. We're in checks and tests 4, page 372 to 374, as well as making sure you have these 3 questions written into your copy and answered in your copy. Can I ask you to make a short note about each of these 1, 2, 3, 4, 7 different terms here into your copy as well, please? And as I'll be doing throughout this chapter, I suggest you come back to these keywords at the start of the chapter, go through them and see which ones you can explain to yourself that you feel like you understand these properly. Okay, talk to you tomorrow.